Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Henry. I am here from the Kent Invicta Chamber of Commerce, and welcome to Business Bites. Today, we are absolutely delighted to be joined by Ben Fitter-Harding from Dodgems and Floss, who's going to be giving us a really engaging conversation today on your website's readiness for AI bots. So I know this is one you've all been looking forward to, and this is one that's been certainly going to be important for the next couple of years for sure. Just a quick one. If you have got any questions throughout the session, please do just note these down in the chat and then we'll get to these at the end of the session. But that is absolutely enough from me. You're all here to hear Ben. So I'm going to pass over to Ben now. Ben, over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Henry, and good afternoon, everyone. Yes, the topic of today's webinar is your website ready for the AI bots? So let's get straight into it. I'm Ben Fitter-Harding, and I'm the studio director of a creative agency that's based on Canterbury High Street, which is where I am today. I know it looks like a nice backdrop on Zoom, but this is actually our studio in subterranean Canterbury. We are a studio that is specialist in branding and design, but also a pioneer of innovative website builds. And over Christmas 24-25, we were bothered by a question of the emergence of ChatGPT and other AI tools and what that meant for the future of all of our websites, from a professional perspective for our business, but for all of our businesses in terms of what it means in terms of how we communicate in the future. And that was the basis of neural web optimization, which we're going to talk about today. Now, there will be an opportunity for live testing later on. So if you're feeling brave and you'd like us to have a live test of your website so we can talk about some of the results, then pop your website address in the chat and Henry's going to keep an eye on those for us. And if we've got time, we'll do some testing later on. Right, first off, what is AI readiness? What do we mean when we're talking about being ready for AI? Does that mean having a ChatGPT subscription? No, we're talking about something quite different here. We're talking about whether your website is ready to be accessed by AI and by the bots and the crawlers and tools that these AI solutions use. Now, any website can, in theory, be used by AI tools like ChatGPT and Copilot and Gemini. But it might not be that it can use it very well. When we're talking about how a website can be used, yes, these things can be crawled and scraped and used to train AI models, which is the information that they're born with, or they can be used by AI models in real time when they're trying to answer a user's question. But just like with SEO, with search engine optimization and getting listed on search engines for the keywords that you're interested in and you want people to find you under, there's logic to how AI selects the websites that it uses for its information and that it uses to answer its users' questions. And we want to make sure that it's our websites that it's drawing those answers from. So we're staring in the face of the AI age at this point, and it will be an age. You know, there's no doubt at this point that what we're going into now is a fundamental transformation of how we live and how we work. And in that age, priority will be given to information that is designed to be consumed by machines. So what do we mean by that? I mean, I guess we all kind of thought that the whole point of AI was that it's using the same language that we are. But AI thinks about things a little bit differently. It wants information that has clear provenance, is easily accessible, is properly labeled, and delivered to it very fast. And when you think it through, that makes sense, because if it's not coming really fast, for example, and I'm asking a question to Copilot, if it can't get that information off my website quickly, it's going to get it off someone else's website. It's building indexes, hybrids of what we used to have on Google, for example, and what we have for AI, where it's prioritizing the things that it needs to be able to do its job. And AI has this kind of pre-programmed focus on doing its job, fulfilling that request at all costs. It has to do that. So why should we care? Well, how our businesses are perceived by machines, by AI agents, that is key to how we're going to be seen and how our websites will be interacted with in the future. AI agents, and in the future, as an extension of that, robotics, will rely on how our businesses are perceived, and that depends on the content and the structure of our websites. That's the information that it's using. That's the whole world that it has to digest. So if it's not there on our website and it's not set out properly, then the worst case scenario is that we become invisible over time to these machines that are now doing so much. And AI agents you may have heard of. It sounds like a pipe dream, but there are two browsers released this month. OpenAI, who create ChatGPT, and Microsoft both released major updates to their web browsers this month that incorporate AI agents, which, for example, if I tell ChatGPT Atlas, if I tell that I want an outfit for a gala dinner at the weekend, tell it the subject matter and the name of it, it can look back at past gala dinners. It can look through photos. It can find me what it thinks is an appropriate outfit to wear. And then it can use my John Lewis login to go and select some clothes, buy them, add them to basket and ship them without me doing anything. And it's choosing that for me. And that just demonstrates how quickly these decisions are going to be taken out of the hands of our customers and put into the hands of AI. And this is where we have a real chance to move the needle. So just as an illustrative point, the problem right now for us is getting discovered. SparkToro is a marketing agency and a research agency in the US, and they've just released a figure this summer that 50% of all Google searches in the US now end without a click. That's 58% of web traffic that would have gone off to my website, your website, that now the user gets the answer and they're done. They've had the answer. They haven't had to visit anyone's website. So website traffic is falling and will fall. And we need to not be scared by the fact that it seems like less people are using our websites. So long as we structure them properly for AI, we can still leverage this and we can even take advantage of what's happening. So what is neural web optimization? What are we talking about here? In a simple phrase, it's transforming the way that we make information available in the AI age. And it's thinking about it from the AI's perspective. The AI is another customer now. We've got our human customers and we've got AI. And the changes are really far-reaching, and there's very little information available out there for us right now to understand what it is that we need to do. So as the culmination of our research this year, we put together a tool that allows us to carry out systematic tests of websites to see how they're faring in terms of being ready for AI, using the knowledge that we've managed to pull together from different AI models, different sources on the internet, and our own experience. There are 4 pillars to neural web optimization, and they relate to what I said earlier on. It's speed, content, schema, and API. And I'll go through those in a bit more detail shortly. Now, the results we break down into those 4 categories to make it nice and easy to see where we're doing well and where we need to make improvements for the future. Our research. So we created this tool and put it out there into the wild. Over 200 tests have been done now by businesses on their websites. In fact, I think it was about 260 when we came on earlier. I think a few of you may have gone off and found the tool already and had a play. But that's given us a real insight into the playing field right now and where we stand as Kent businesses and where we have an opportunity to excel. So let's get straight into what we found. We put together an overall score, and the overall average gives us an idea of how we're doing so that over time we can track and make sure that the businesses that we're testing on the tool are improving and that our overall score is going up. That's what we want to see. Right now, what we're seeing is at 42.7%, there's a long way to go. We've got work to do. That's okay. It just means there's a lot of opportunities there for us all to exploit. That's about all this score tells us. So let's dig a bit deeper. So onto speed. 1 in 5 of the websites that people came on and tested, because people have come on and tested these themselves, are still failing basic speed tests. So for years now, we've all known that speed's really important for getting recognized by search engines like Google, because people are on mobile phones now, they're on tablets, they don't want to be waiting on a mobile connection for something to come through. It needs to load pretty quick. So speed has been pretty key for a while. AI absolutely hates tardiness. AI just will not stand for it. So speed is becoming a really important thing. Luckily, it doesn't mean you need to throw out your old website and get a new one just to get the speed up. There are things that we can do. So things like removing bloat. So if you've got a lovely video when someone hits your homepage, great, really visually arresting, we need to check that that's really compressed, that it loads really fast. We need to check what hosting you're using. Is it someone that's reputable and fast? I'd say Amazon Web Services, a very good web host, but we all know what happened a few days ago. But generally speaking, they'd be one of the ones that we would be recommending. But also your content management system. If you're using WordPress, great, it's super easy to use. Loads of people use it. A lot of people have a lot of plugins in WordPress doing some really useful things and some things that are just nice to have. Some of those plugins can slow things way down. So just things like clearing up your content management system, getting rid of old plugins that you don't need, streamlining your content, making sure your images are compressed, that can be a big help. So speed, and hopefully that's something that we can all be working on, something that we can all improve on our sites. Even little changes will go a long way. Content. Now, marketers have been telling us for a very long time that content is king. So why are we scoring 38% on our websites for content? That's pretty horrible and a bit scary. But it doesn't mean that the content we have on our websites is bad content. It just means we need to think about who we're writing it for. And earlier on, I said that the information needs to be designed for machines. It's going to be consumed by machines. So that's very different to writing content for a human. We can pick up things from a piece of content, and our brains will just assume and tell us what's what. But it's a bit different when we're thinking about who we're writing for in terms of AI. Is the content we're writing answering someone's question? A lot of how people are finding things now is question driven. It's like going back in time to Ask Jeeves, except it's been realized now as something that's actually happening. So there are easy ways of doing that. FAQs. And even if you've got an FAQ on your website, think about the questions that people would actually ask ChatGPT, Copilot, Gemini. Put them in there. And even if it's a question that maybe you don't even want to answer, but people will ask it, if you don't answer the question, one of your competitors will. So it's really important to have questions and answers in a really clear structure. This is your chance to put words into AI's mouth, because AI, it's trying to conserve energy. It's trying to be efficient. If it can find an answer to a user's question in its database or by grabbing it from your website, then great. That's exactly what it'll do. So that's your chance to put your spin on it. Regular articles are also really important, but don't just run out to ChatGPT and start generating 3 new articles a week, because the AI tools already know those answers. It already knows that information. It's looking for your perspective. By all means, we use ChatGPT. It's really great for coming up with ideas for articles, even drafting whole paragraphs. But then they need to be heavily edited with your perspective, your voice, and they need to have the author's bio. Ideally, a link to their LinkedIn. If your LinkedIn's well maintained, great, link it back to your LinkedIn. Why? Because AI is trying to give its user, its customer, accurate information. And if it knows, for example, that I went to the University of Kent and that one of my modules was on neural networking, then it knows that what I talk about when I'm talking about neural web optimization is more likely to be factual and contextually relevant than if I'd done something different. If I'd pursued my other hopeful career when I was in my late teens and done something like media studies, it wouldn't give me the same credibility when it's answering a question. So by joining up the dots for it, we can help it have confidence in our content and use our content. And then that piece of content that it's really time consuming, right? Generating content is time consuming. None of us do enough of it. If you're going to go to all that effort, then these extra little things at the end will have such an important part to play as we move into this AI age. Massive wins from content. But step back and think about your whole website from an AI's perspective and what it's doing to answer AI's questions. What is it saying to a computer as well as to a human? We can do the nice graphical side. We can make it really appeal to somebody, but the content has to talk in words to the machine. Right. Something that's a little more mysterious is schema. something that has been around for a while, but now is more important than ever. And what we're seeing with people who are testing their websites is that with Schema, it's nailed or it's nothing. You've either implemented it, and if you have, you're probably implementing it pretty well. But if you haven't, then yeah, this is a zero score thing. If you've got a zero score, it's not a huge problem. It can be addressed, but it takes a bit of understanding this one to really know what it is. Schema is how we tell AI, it's how we tell a machine what our content is. So blog, research, author, FAQ, product, service, offer. We wrap content in Schema so that it describes to a computer what we've written about. And again, that comes from a laziness on AI's part, that it really doesn't want to have to spend ages scraping a website and then trying to figure out what that information is. We have an opportunity to tell it what it is, and it will trust that if Schema is set up and set out properly. It's coded directly into your web pages. So if you've got a website that you can edit the source of, then this is something that can be added. You may be able to read up on this and do it yourself, or this might be someone that you want to ask someone who's particularly nerdy or someone who's got an interest in the technical side to help and just get this done for you. It's potentially a big win. You've got this content on your website, and this is the link that showcases it to the machine world. So if you act now with something like implementing Schema, it's a real chance to get ahead of the competition. Now, the fourth pillar that we test is whether websites are API driven. And 1 in 3 websites tested weren't API driven in any way. It's an indication that a lot of people's websites are probably a few years old, probably aren't using newer technologies. And when we talk about API driven, what we're talking about is separating where the information that we create is held on the back end and how it's displayed to the person using it, which is on the front end. Now, the advantage of that is that ultimately AI doesn't want to have to access the visual part of your website at all. If it can, it wants to go straight to the other machine, to the server that's hosting your website, and it wants to take the information straight from there and use it. That's by far the quickest and most efficient way that it can gather information and use it meaningfully. Now, that is a structural change. Either your website will already be API driven or it won't, in which case, most businesses are updating their websites every 3 to 5 years in a more significant way, in a capital intensive way. So if you're not API driven right now when you test, don't worry, but put a flag down and just make sure that when you come to redevelop your site in a few years' time, that's something that you're making sure that you get. It's a future thing, and it would be really good to make sure that that's in all of our plans as Kent businesses for our online presences for the future. So this is the slightly terrifying part where we try and actually use the tool live and test some sites. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch my screen from the presentation to my lovely web browser. Hopefully that's what you can see now. And just let me move Zoom around. Okay. So here we are, and I see very helpfully we've got a few websites in the chat there, and Ricky, I think you were first, so let's grab that one and let's see what happens. What I'll do is, bear with me just a second, just going to quickly check that we can load that before we get started. Lovely. Okay, so we put your web address in down here. And we hit test. Now, what's being simulated at this point is all of these different categories and all of these different areas are now being tested. So one of Dodgems and Floss's servers is reaching out and it's going to check for each of these different things. So it takes a moment because there's quite a lot that needs to be assessed here. We found that using AI to do these kinds of tests and checks was really unpredictable because AI will check what it wants to check, and it does hallucinate, and it doesn't always provide you with a very accurate reading. AI likes to cache something, an information, when it's used it before. It doesn't go out and retrieve a fresh copy. So it's actually really difficult to reliably use AI tools themselves to check whether something is ready for AI. But using the tool, we can do. So let's start looking at the results we've got in so far. So let's go back to front, because speed is always the last one to complete once it's done all the tests. Content, 20%. What does that mean? That sounds like you've got horrible content, and it's not that at all. It's picked up that you've got articles, which means there are articles on the site that are labeled as articles, and it can actually understand that those are articles, which is great. I'm going to keep getting pop-ups. Let me go to that. And that's brilliant. But there's clearly a lot of other information on there that could be better used by AI if we can mark it properly. So if we're using metadata to describe things, if we're using timestamps on those articles, for example, FAQs, there might be FAQs on there, but AI can't see them as FAQs unless it scrapes and manually digests that and then tries to figure out what's there. So that could be a schema thing. You know, that could be that we can use schema to identify those FAQs. And things like reviews, and that doesn't have to mean like 5 stars out of 5. It could be something more granular than that, but something that we can identify to AI as a testimonial, as something that someone independent is saying about our product or service. Schema is interesting because here it's clearly found traces that it's there and ready to be used, but it looks like it hasn't been set up and it hasn't been fully enabled on all the different items of content. So again, that would be a great thing for you to look at. See where schema can be used. It might be that there's a plugin installed ready for it, and you can see that there's something there, but it hasn't been rolled out to the content itself. So definitely want to look at. It's not an API-driven website. It's kind of pretty binary. I wouldn't expect to find kind of one of those and not the others. You do sometimes, depending on how it's been configured. But again, that would be a marker for in the future, looking at API-driven. And speed, now 85% looks quite good. But actually, when we're looking at speed from websites, we're really looking at 95% and above in terms of passing Google's page speed test. That's what we need to be truly considered. And all the work can go in on content and everything else, but if it's not responding quickly, then there's that chance that we'll be discounted and overlooked by somebody else. So it's good. There is, it's getting a good response time, but there's probably something there in the content or something else that's a bit heavy, and it's just bringing that score down a little bit, and we'd like to see that a bit higher. So again, those the tips that I suggested earlier around checking for compression, checking how big your images are, check your hosting, that might just get you up to the 95% relatively easily. Right, have we got time to do another one? I'd love to test a couple more if we can. I think we've got outreach tuition. Let me grab that one. And then I'm going to put Henry on the spot and ask him to pick a final one at random for us to do after this one. Bear with me, just let me check that one's going to load for me. Okay, great. So back to the tool. Let's pop this in. Okay, that's just going to reset back and start a new test. And again, it's going to begin that whole process now at looking at your website, not as a human, but as an AI tool. It's going to try and connect you through all the different ways. It's going to start digesting your content, looking at what it can figure out is actually something. And as I said earlier, these AI tools are incredible. They can scrape your entire website and then spend a lot of resources and time figuring out exactly what's what. They're incredibly powerful, right? Incredibly clever. But they won't if they don't have to. And this is our opportunity to compete and to make sure that our website gives the AI an easy ride, because then it's much more likely to ping us backwards and forwards to answer someone's questions. Right, we've already got some results coming through. So we go the other way this time. So again, speed, 77% isn't the end of the world, but it's not fast enough for these tools. So there will be things that we can do there to improve speed. Just again, have a look at all the things that are on there. Image sizes are a big one. Check the plugins on the CMS if you're using something like WordPress. Make sure that every piece of content that's on there needs to be on there and is loading fast. There could be something on there that's stopping the page from loading. Certain scripts and certain plugins can kind of hold the page and not let the rest of it load until that's finished loading. That's a killer, There are ways around that. So that's something to look at. Not API driven again, so that's something for the future. Schema, we got to the next stage on this one. That's interesting. So schema is enabled and it's picked up business information. So brilliant. Okay, so we just need to carry on through there and see how it's been implemented and if we can extend that out to the rest of our content. And on content itself, it's picked up that there are articles. And again, there could be FAQs, reviews, articles, but it's what it's seeing from an AI perspective without doing any clever analysis. So it's seeing that there's articles and metadata that's describing pieces of the content. Great, that's really good. Next up is how we can improve that. So looking at adding dates and times to content so that it can see how old it is. I know that feels horrible because we write a piece of content and we want it to be used forever. But from an AI's perspective, it needs to know if it's relevant now or if it's historical. And it needs to be able to see time because we perceive time. AI only has kind of dates to go on. So it needs to know where that piece of content exists in its big slider of time. And again, FAQs are a really easy win here. If it's got them, great, they need to be in the schema. If it doesn't have them, then get cracking, right? In FAQs, it'll be well worth it, I promise you. Right, should we have one more? Let's have a look. Henry, which one are we going with?
Well, it's only fair to do Rachel next, as she was next on the list. So
Wonderful, thank you.
UK. There we go.
Canterbury's own flagship domain name. Let's get that straight into the tool and see what happens. Okay. Off we go. And it's lovely to see so many familiar names and faces joining the call today, by the way. Really lovely. So hopefully we can all have plenty of opportunity to answer questions about these things. If not today, then in the future. You're always, a lot of you will have my details anyway. You're always welcome to get in touch. As you may have gathered, I love talking about this stuff. I'll chat about it all day long. Right, we've already got results coming in. So there we go. We've got our first pass on the speed there, 96%. That's really good to see. Optimization is very important for speed. There's clearly work that's been done there to optimize, make sure those images are compressed and make sure those pages load quickly, even if there's things on the page that then take longer. Desktop loaded very, very quickly. Mobile, again, limited bandwidth, smaller screens, needs to be super responsive. So there's probably just some little tweaks that need to be done there, to be honest. I wouldn't expect there to be any major changes needed if it's already scoring so high on everything else. Not API driven at the moment. Again, so many sites aren't. It'd be a really good thing to look at for the future, for the next iteration, so that we can feed that information directly into the AI tools without them having to hang around on your website at all. Schema's not implemented here, so that's going to be a great win if you can get to it. And it's likely, not guaranteed, but likely that you can do that in the existing site. So talk to whoever's managing the site at the moment, or if it's being done in-house, then it's a bit of research, start implementing schema and make sure that that content can be understood by the AI tools, because yeah, I know that there's great content on there and it'd be really great to flag that content for AI so it can manipulate it better. And again, it's identifying some of the content on the site, but other things probably just need to be labeled better. And that's where schema could really help. If there are FAQs, then great, let's make sure that we're using them. But again, going back to things like FAQs now and thinking, well, what are people asking about Canterbury? What are they going to ask ChatGPT? And do we have that answer on the site? Now, some of those answers, it might be like, well, we could write War and Peace on that particular question, parking, for example. But it doesn't have to be that detailed. Often AI tools want to give you something short to start with, and then they say, would you like me to find out more about that? Because they're trying to be efficient. They don't want to do all the digging for you on the first answer. They just want to give you something and then they'll ask for more. And if you've given them the initial nugget, then it's likely they're going to keep using your site and your information to fuel that conversation going forward, because you're the credible source at this point. Right. I think we'll leave the testing for there, but what I will do, if anyone's got their phone handy, you can grab the tool there and give it a go. It's nwo.dodgemsandfloss.com if you just want to type it into your web browser. Have some fun with it. If you have questions, please get in touch. But hopefully it'll be helpful and you can keep using it in the future to track your progress and see how your scores are improving. And they will improve, if you can get started on some of these things. The landscape is shifting very quickly now. When we started this piece of research, the rate of change was months. Now it's days. Every day, there's a new AI tool, there's a new advancement. The integration of AI agents into our workflows is becoming I mean, it was quite comical to start with watching AI do things, but now you can literally sit and watch AI do useful tasks using your own computer, and we're becoming passengers on our own experience, which is interesting, but like I said, an opportunity, and one that I really want Kent businesses to be ahead of. Um, Citigroup are forecasting that total AI spend will eclipse $2.8 trillion by 2029. And the reason that I mentioned that particular stat is because when we're talking about these volumes of money being committed, it's either the mother of all tech bubbles or there's no plan B. Investors, tech giants, governments, this is what they're piling into. There doesn't seem to be any other option. This is the way things are moving. If their commitment is that substantial, then we need to follow suit. We don't want to get left behind. The good news is that there is easy things that we can all be doing right now. We can get ahead simply by thinking about our websites and our businesses from a machine's perspective, from AI's perspective, and remembering that our next prospect, our next customer, might be behind ChatGPT or Copilot or Claude rather than on our own website. Our website will be the tool that they're using, and that might not be a written tool, that could be a voice assistant. And increasingly, Alexa, Siri, Google's own AI voice assistants are bringing that capability in. My Siri's a little bit behind. Mine still can't figure out what the weather's like outside. But in a little bit of time, I think next year they're planning to integrate that as well. So when these conversations are happening by voice and there's nothing visual, that really helps you think about your own content from an AI's perspective, because that communication has to happen. Those answers have to be there. We can't show them anything. They need to hear it. We need to think about how that journey is going to happen in the AI age. How does our customer, our prospect, go from talking to ChatGPT to buying our product or contacting us about our service? We can design that. We can think about that. It's just a different perspective, right? It's just coming at it from a completely different point of view. Use the tool, use it today, and then see what changes you can make, and then check it every now and again and see if those scores are going up. And like I said, if you want to make a bigger play, if you want to make a more significant change to your website, then please reach out to Dodgems and Floss or to me. And more than happy to help answer those questions and give you advice on what you can do for the future. I think we're just past time, but I'd love to take any questions, Henry, if anyone's staying on and would like to chat further.
Yes, Ben, perfect. Thank you. Like you said,
Brilliant.
we have slightly run out of
Thank
time,
you.
but more than happy to take a few questions. If any of you do need to shoot off, though, do please feel free. The first question came from our guest from Outreach Tuition. Sorry, I can't see your name on the Zoom. I didn't know if you wanted to unmute and ask your question.
Yeah, hi. Sorry, I was on mute as well in case my dog barks. But hi, Ben. Nice to see you again. I was just really wondering, I'm assuming that you guys could do this for us, and sort of what sort of costing are we looking at? It's definitely something we need to all have on our agenda, isn't it? So, it's got to be done. It's just a case of when. So, what sort of money or what sort of things do you offer? What sort of packages or?
Yeah, of course. I think what we found with neural web optimization is where we can, it's great to empower businesses to do as much of it as possible themselves. It's just cheaper, it's more efficient. And oftentimes, because the content needs to be really authentic, it kind of needs to come from the business. And that really is so valuable. When it gets a bit more technical, then absolutely, we can look at something and we can estimate it probably, a few hours to start looking at how we can integrate schema. Great. So you might be talking around £500 for us to actually do some work around that. Where we're talking about more substantial changes, I think that where I can bring most value and where we can is to just give you the flags to look for in the future. And of course, we would love to work with any Kent business, anyone interested in this, to then talk about future websites and putting together an option for that. But just thinking really, why do we need this website? What is its purpose? Who's it talking to? And starting again from there. Because there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that within 12 months, the way we think about websites and the web in general is going to be quite different. So if we can help you plan for the future and help you start getting that brief together for what you might go out to us or to the rest of the market with, then brilliant. That gets us ready.
That's amazing. Thank you, Ben. And I will be contacting you to have a look at it for us. We'll try and do a little bit of work
Awesome.
ourselves over the next month or so, and then we'll be in touch.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Perfect. There we go. There we go. And one final question, Nathan. You had a question. Sorry for mispronouncing your name. Would you like to unmute and ask a question?
Yep. No, thanks a lot, Henry. And I think, first of all, Ben, very, very informative, very good value as far as the 30 minutes is concerned.
Thank you.
To ask you a question, I think you have answered the first part of my question, which is how and what do we need to do to be able to do this. But the second part is, if we did convert our website to API enabled, does it automatically bring the, what do you call it? The other scores up for content and speed and schema and other things? Or we have got to change content also, the way it is all formatted?
Yes. Okay. No, great. Thank you. Yeah. So when it comes to making those changes and the costs involved, as the needs become more technical and as there's more work to do, then it does increase costs from that perspective. So yes, the more that you can do now with the websites that you've got, the better. And then that content will still be super useful when you're ready to invest in a new site or something that is built from the ground up to be ready from AI. And we only build sites now that are built ready for AI for two audiences, essentially, for the machine and for the human. In terms of those four pillars, frustratingly, you do have to address each one. These are, from the research that we've done, these are kind of the tenets of AI and the things that it's looking for. So API is kind of the gold standard. Once we get to API driven, then we're saying our website can talk directly to a computer and they don't even have to access the bit that we see. And for me, that's kind of the fourth in order of the priorities, because we get all the others right first, and that will still help us in the future when we rebuild the technical bit. The API-driven bit is the hardest thing to implement on an existing website. We have done it. We have taken a website that wasn't API-driven, taken it apart and rebuilt it. But the return is not the same there as doing a whole new web project with a new vision for a website and a new purpose, and incorporating that as part of the journey. Get much better value that way. So while I would love to say, everyone get in touch and we will quote you for getting your websites API driven, it would be much better for us to work together on all the other things first. And then when you're ready for a new website build, let's look at how we build it for AI from the foundation.
All right. No, thanks a lot, Ben.
Thank you.
Perfect. And thank you ever so much. And thanks to everyone who engaged in the session and the Q&A at the end. That does bring us to the end of the session. Ben's contact details were shared with you beforehand. I'm sure that he'd be more than happy to answer any further questions you perhaps had that you wanted to take offline. I've been Henry from the Kent and Victor Chamber of Commerce, and thank you all ever so much for joining us for Business Bites. Have a fantastic rest of your day. Take care. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.